high school RE classes, served as facility trustees, and is regularly invited to speak on Sunday morning. Just like you, Bob. Before retiring, he taught at the junior high, high school, and university levels in Florida, Alaska, Indiana, and Tennessee. He has been recognized for his excellence in education and was given Alaska's Economics Teacher of the Year award. He is a person who appreciates the challenge of new ideas and uses his understanding of science and history to develop insights and perspectives worth hearing and discussing. And I'd just like to add, I've really been looking forward to hearing this talk. So let's welcome Charlie. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me come and speak to you this morning. I've heard good things about this congregation. Our good friends Raj and Charmy and the Fosters, who are enjoying the sunshine in Florida, and Gracia, our good friends, and have told me how much they've enjoyed being here. Can you hear me okay? Is this mic in the right place? I heard a joke on public radio not too long ago that went like this: why is a Unitarian Universalist funeral such a depressing occasion? And the punchline was because the deceased is all dressed up with nowhere to go. Now, certainly this is not a belief all Unitarian Universalists hold, but the humor points to a serious question that people who do not accept canned paradigms about salvation, immortality, or heaven and hell have to face. How do we find the spiritual well within us, our center, our anchors? There was a story a number of years ago in the UU World magazine that was very moving and brought this issue. It seemed that a Unitarian Universalist was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he had about a year to live. It was a very difficult, sobering experience, and I'm sure writing the article was difficult for him. Well, it just so happened at that time that a friend of his who went to a traditional Christian church was also diagnosed with terminal cancer. And he wrote in the article how he sometimes envied his friend for the equanimity and the peace he seemed to feel, because you see, his Christian friend was certain that he was saved, that he would spend eternity with God, and perhaps as a final consolation, his family would join him eventually, and they would be together. But in his heart of hearts, he could not believe these ideas and this faith that his traditional Christian friend had. And I have a feeling that most of us are like that. I mean, when it gets to the bottom of something, we have to feel it deeply within us. But he found peace in his own way. There's not a person in this room who has not or will not face pain, sickness, sorrow, despair. And we each must face our eventual death, because that's just part of life. And tragedy that doesn't happen to us often happens to those we love. And sometimes we find ourselves with a feeling that is so deep with pain that it seems for at least that time to be inconsolable. And we are looking for a road to move forward. And we're looking for some strength. We're looking for some peace. We know, too, that a good life is not always easy to lead. There's difficult choices we have to make. And it helps to have anchors for which we see our life and the choices we have. So whether you're a liberal seeker, an agnostic, an atheist, traditional Christian, or believer, wherever you are on the scale, on the spectrum, spiritual spectrum, I believe we all have to come to a faith in something that is larger and something more permanent than ourselves. There's a well within each of us. And you can call it soul, you can call it will, You can call it spirit or just plain character, where we have a faith that resides, that gives us a sense for meaning and gets us through these experiences in life. But what is faith? Well, one definition you'll find is unquestioning belief. But I doubt you would be in this church if that were your definition of faith. But there's another that comes a little closer. Anything believed which we hold complete trust and confidence. And even that word complete might give some of you a problem. But we all have to have something inside of us, where how we see the world, what we put our faith in, what are our ground beliefs. I think our deepest beliefs come from a variety of sources. They're strongly rooted in intuition. They are changed and tested by time and experience. They go beyond simple logic. They go beyond even words. Many of us, especially in this church, share a commitment to a faith that must be tempered by reason and humanity. That's the faith I want to talk about this morning. How do we religious liberals find ours? What is it where we find awe and reverence? Where do we put our faith? See, we open ourselves to a wide variety of sources as religious or spiritual liberals, which adds to a great responsibility that we have to seek, to learn. And also, because of our openness, we had a burden, I think one we cherish, to be reflective and make choices. I know in my own meandering spiritual journey there were many times, especially when I was younger, I wish I had some of the certainty that some of my friends had. You know, you're searching through the murkiness of things and you're looking for some bedrock you can stand on. And your friends seem to know all the answers. And all I seem to have was a lot of questions. So I think most of us might have had something of that experience. I suspect most of you, like me, you're also a refugee of sorts from another traditional belief. I didn't grow up as a Unitarian Universalist. I grew up as a Roman Catholic. One of the places that I have found to help build a faith is to go back and revisit on my own terms in my own way the faith that I came from. Sometimes we pass over things or dismiss them and fail to see the power and the spirit in them, the wisdom. Here are a couple of examples I found in revisiting my past that I'd like to share. One is in the Old Testament in the book of Micah. The people have strayed from the laws. The people of Israel have strayed from the laws, and they asked Micah, "What is it we should do to be saved?" And Micah replies, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and walk humbly with your God?" What a clear, powerful message. I think it's a message, no matter where you are, you can hold with your heart as well as your head. You could ask, what does a good life require of you? And I think the answer could be much the same. Or in the New Testament, when Jesus is asked, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And Jesus replies, "You shall have the Lord your God, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. And the second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." On these two commandments depend all the laws and the prophets. It rings with an idea shared by every major religion, finding and knowing your spiritual center. I think there are many places in our past sometimes we can go back and look and find seeds of wisdom that we can nourish again and think about. We should always avoid the mistake of literalism, which, as Joseph Campbell warns us, evaporates spiritual power. Now, to talk in a church like this about miracles is probably something, maybe some of you are wondering about that too. What's he going to talk about in a church like this? We don't usually talk about miracles in Unitarian Universalist Church. Many of us shake our heads in disbelief as a superstitious or incredulous kind of notion. We have seen miracles talked about in Scripture sometimes to show the supernatural, showing special favor or blessedness on one group or another. We see a lot of what people talk about as miracles as being explained better by science. But if we're to define a miracle in this way, something indescribably wonderful, yet inexplicable, incomprehensible, something that draws us toward humility and reverence. Perhaps there are miracles you do witness. We witness. Correct. Let me give you three. The universe exists. Another one, life exists. And the third one, you and I, we human beings become absolutely awesome, mysterious, ultimate questions. Why? How? I think these are a part of a shared human experience to which all of us seek some sort of answer that transcends. One source of faith, I think, is through spiritual experiences, a deeper insight into what is before us and seeing beyond what is before us, an awareness, a new connection to things. These experiences are sometimes referred to as transcendent moments. Transcendent motions, or William James calls them wider experiences. Experiences that strike us with a clearness of power and truth. Experiences in which we feel alive. We feel more energy and peace. Experiences that cause us to change ourselves. Experiences that teach us truths that transcends time, culture, geography. Experiences that strike at the core of what it means to be human. Experiences that carry us to a spiritual plane. Emerson relates how simple and unexpected they can be. He writes, crossing a bare common in snow puddled at twilight, under a clouded sky, without having in my thoughts any occurrence of special good fortune, I have enjoyed a perfect exhilaration. I am glad to the brink of fear. Surely you've been out on one of those clear nights where the stars were all bright and shining and found yourself filled with a tangible awe. Or perhaps like Emerson, felt the stars, he writes, pouring satire upon the pompous business of the day. The spiritual journey is built on such experience, for they are the inward journeys of the deepest sort. In large measure, they become the basis for our personal faith, whatever it might be. In Tolstoy's War and Peace, Peter the hero is supposed to be the richest man in Russia, and he is captured, thrown in prison in the French invasion, and dragged through much of its misery. Cold, vermin, and hunger assail him. But the supreme surprise that he finds is the revelation of the real scale of life's values. Here, because he was deprived, for the first time, he appreciated food when he was hungry, water when he was thirsty, talking to another human being because he wished to exchange words with them. He overflowed with emotion when he saw the sun rising in the morning and the vaporous clouds coming up from the ground. He learned that we are made for happiness and that happiness is in us, in the satisfaction of the daily needs of existence, and that unhappiness is the fatal result of not of our needs, but our abundance. And by the way, I'm not advocating imprisonment as a way to have such a transcendent moment. What is important to remember in all this, that it's not the occasion or the setting, it's our openness, our capacity to grasp what's before us, to have our life currents absorbed by it. When's the last time you experienced such a moment? Maybe from a sunrise or a sunset, watching your children, maybe from the loss of a loved one, and the miracle of the seasons, from music, art, poetry, from a kindness that you received, from a love whose depth surprised you, or in Wordsworth's words, from the impulse of the vernal wood. Some of us experience that we learn a lot more about life's deepest lessons from our pain than our joy. In some fashion, pain cuts to the core of us, that wordless place within us, sweeps away everything that's unimportant, and forces us to recalibrate our values. We can find a new strength, a new peace, and a new value for living. I think that might be the source of where that old adage you hear about comes from: if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. Jesus said, "Truly, truly, I say unto you, unless one is reborn anew, he cannot see the kingdom of God." Isn't that just another way of saying, how can we be spiritual if we cannot see things anew or find meanings that go beyond our senses? Aren't we in a real sense born again because we have these experiences that change us and change the way we see the world? If the poem of creation goes on uninterrupted, as Thoreau tells us, we have a chance every day to see something anew, to change. It's the primary challenge in every religion and every life. In Buddhism, it's a fundamental precept that each of us has the capacity, the same potential in developing inner peace and therefore finding happiness and joy. That it lies within ourselves, that what we have to do is change our mental attitude and perceptions. Theodore Parker, a very profound Unitarian Universalist thinker in the 19th century, wrote that he learned early there were two basic ways to see the world. One was of sensation, only through your senses and only through inductive reasoning. And the second was transcendence, where the mind uses intuition and our consciousness to experience things beyond just what we are sensing. This idea of transcendent experience relies on intuition and spiritual consciousness. Places that lie beyond the senses can be troubling for some people. It seems to fly in the face of the way many people think or have a great deal of faith in, like their senses and science. Doesn't science rely on sensory data and logic and inductive reasoning in its basic development? The answer I found is yes and no. If you're talking about proving ideas and theories, it's done that way with observation and testing over and over, very empirical. But if you're talking about scientific discovery, the answer is no. Almost all major scientific discoveries have occurred through deductive reasoning. Here's Albert Einstein. I quote, "The supreme task is to arrive at those universal elementary laws from which the cosmos can be built by pure deduction. There is no logical path to these laws. Only intuition, resting on sympathetic understanding of experience, can reach them." He's the one who also wrote, there's two ways you can live your life. One is as though nothing was a miracle, and one as if everything was a miracle. Surely what he just got through saying sounds more spiritual than scientific. I'm always reminded that, and you've seen these popular posters you can buy of Einstein, where his soulful face and his disheveled hair, looking out of the poster, imagination is more important than knowledge. Again, that's food for thought. How else are we going to see things anew? How else do we change? Imagination, I think, is a very important thing in a spiritual journey. We have seen here a few examples of where a particular experience leads to an enlightening moment. and how important our capacity and openness is about it. It is seeing what is in front of us, or as the Hindu would say, seeing through Maya, to get beneath the surface of things. And it's behind an old Hindu saying, which goes like this: reality is that layer of distraction between us and enlightenment. In a more Western way, Aldo Leopold, the great naturalist and conservationist, advises us, he says, and I quote, "Like all treasures of the mind, perception can be split into infinitely small fractions without losing its quality. The weeds in a city lot can convey the same lessons as the redwoods. The farmer may see in his own cow pasture what may not be vouchsafed in the South Seas." All that's good news for those of us who don't like or cannot afford to travel to more exotic places. But before we get too smug, Leopold warns us, perception cannot be purchased with either learned degrees or dollars. It grows at home as well as abroad, and he who has little may use it to as good, to who he has much. I believe that some of our most wondrous perceptions come before we have dollars in our pocket and much education under our belt. It's a time called childhood. It's a time when we experience the world in probably the most open way we ever do. Innocence and openness can be powerful lenses. Remember Blake's auguries of innocence? To see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower. Auguries of innocence. It's easier for children sometimes than us to just see things, absorb things. This ability is alluded to in a portion of one of my favorite poems. You voice complaint. You wrinkle lament. You wish what ain't. You're not content. Oh, once as a tot industriously, a castle you wrought of sand by the sea. Joyful you were at plying your trade. No grumblings did stir, no wailing for aid. You knew not how long your castle would bide, nor bittered as wrong the lapping sea tide. A whispering sense cherished true law, and just recompense was all that you saw. Yes, life's what we make it, and crucials of time are but trials of a minute to pattern sublime. Seeing pattern sublime, that's what happens when we make sense out of things, by seeing beneath them, beyond them, when we understand something in a new way. I challenge each of us to take time for a deep reflection about our personal perceptions and experiences in developing our faith on our spiritual journey. To choose and cherish a life that encourages these things. To look again at those things we hold with reverence and how they affect how we lead our life. I would also add that one not feel either any kind of anxiety or trepidation in this pursuit. I think we as humans are born to this task. It's a source of joy, I think, for the human spirit. Why else would it be found, this struggle? Every people, every culture, all time, all latitudes, all languages. It's something that challenges every life. Thank you.